Everyone. We would like to thank everyone for attending tonight and to Professor Fujikane for giving her talk. Just a reminder that the musical albums Le Na Honua Pi'ilani, Songs of West Maui, and the Le Na Honua Pi'ilani Na Mele Ho, the 2021 Na Hoku Hano Hano awardee for Compilation Album of the Year, and a melodious huaka'i of West Maui's Mo'o Aina, are available on all digital platforms. The companion songbook, also named Le Na Honua Pi'ilani, is also available from Kamehameha Publishing. All proceeds benefit Na Leo Kalele, West Maui's Kaiapuni Auxiliary Organization. Enjoy this evening. Aloha.
Pilina mai kako, mahalo nui o ko I ke ako ana mai. This series is co-sponsored by HK West Maui Community Fund, the University of Hawaii Maui College Hawaiian Studies Department, and the Kue Petition Hui. The lectures occur monthly. The series features a host of new and established scholars, also innovators and their research and their work on Hawaii and Hawaiian communities. We proudly present this to you via Zoom and live through HK West Maui's Facebook page. Tonight's presentation, Elemental Mapping of the Akua. Candace Fujikane is a professor of English at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Her writing and research engages sets of practices, those that challenge the operations of the U.S. occupying settler state and those that enact a future beyond it. Candace is actively involved in the land struggles against urban and industrial development of Kanaka sacred and storied places in Lualualei Valley, Waiahole, Kalihi, and Mauna Kea, as well as in other places where people live their vision of an independent and sustainable Hawaii. She is an author of mapping. She is the author of Mapping Abundance for a Planetary Future, Kanaka Maoli and Critical Settler Cartographies in Hawaii. Give a virtual round of applause for tonight's speaker. Aloha nui, Candace Fujikane. Aloha.
You're muted.
Yeah, I see only have one person in the attendee side. You think everything is good?
Yeah, because we're live stream, so mostly people will be doing it that way or watching it that way.
Oh, okay. So they're not going to see the attendees part. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm still learning this webinar stuff. Okay,
yeah, and just so you know, too, the questions will be posted mostly on Facebook, and then we'll relay them to you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, aloha mai kako. So happy to be here, and I really want to thank Bianca for all of the amazing work she does in organizing this awesome series. And in addition to the very important legal work that she's doing and that Lance is doing to protect lands and to get those Kuleana lands back to Kanaka Maoli, there's just so much work that they've been doing. And you are, I do use the term settler aloha aina when we're not Kanaka, but I feel like you guys are true aloha aina, really, giving a really beautiful ho'okupu to the lahui. And so I also want to thank Kanani Puo for that introduction. Thank you so much. She's the VP of Hui Aloha Aina and also from Na'aikane o Maui Cultural Center. I want to thank the HK West Maui Fund, Na'aikane o Maui Cultural Center, UH Maui Department of Hawaiian Studies, and the Kue Petition Hui for organizing this talk. So I'm going to do a PowerPoint. That's kind of what I do. I do PowerPoints. It's like my job. My job is doing PowerPoints. And here's the first slide here. So I'm speaking to you from Kanaka Maoli lands in Heiauli on the island of Oahu, where Kanaka Maoli continue to stand for political independence from U.S. occupation and settler colonialism. So I speak as a fourth generation Japanese settler aloha aina, and I use the term settler aloha aina as one that Noelani Goodyear Kaupua uses to refer to those who do not have the Kanaka Maoli Mo'oku Auhau or genealogy, but we stand for lands and waters in Hawaii, and we stand for Hawaii's political independence. So I have that kuleana to stand on the front lines for lands and waters in Hawaii for the Akua who have raised me and have become a part of my physical body. So it would be the lands of Heiauli, the Kaniko rain. Yeah, and here I have this quote from Kekuhi um, Keali'i Kanaka Wale o Haililani, where she explains that you cannot restore an island landscape if you don't see yourself as a part of that place. So, we recognize that we're settlers, but we also call ourselves Aloha Aina too. Okay, and this would be the my kai. My kai is Kavaha o Kamano. People know it as Kaneohebe, but it's called Kavaha o Kamano because it's shaped like the fringe teeth of a shark. There are rings and rings of reefs out there that protect us from tsunamis. Yeah, so that's Kavaha o Kamano. And my all of this under the shelter of the mountain Kiahiaka. So this book, Mapping Abundance for a Planetary Future, Kanaka Maoli and Critical Settler Cartographies in Hawaii, follows the ways that I entered into this kind of mapping work through different land struggles in Hawaii. So I start in Waianae, so there are 2 chapters on Waianae, and then there are 2 chapters on Mauna Wakea, 1 chapter on Kalihi, and then 1 chapter that goes from Heiauli all the way to Punalu'u. And so I look at the various land and water struggles in those areas and how people use mo'olelo to map restoration, to map a decolonial future, to map their decolonial present. Yeah. So you don't have to just wait for decolonization to happen. You can just live that present in right now. Yeah. So today, I'm just in a quick summary. I want to focus on the migration of the mo'o from their home islands in the clouds to Oahu, tracking away the procession of mo'o stretching from Waialua to Kapuka Key Red Hill, right? So the mo'o actually, Kapuka Key is the original name for Red Hill, where we know that right now the military is leaking all this jet fuel into the aquifer, the drinking water. So this story actually does take up part of that history of Red Hill or Kapuka Key. And all of that procession of mo'o represents the iwi mo'o, the backbone of the mo'o continuity. So if you think about a procession of mo'o, that backbone travels from mo'o to mo'o, yeah? And these mo'o continuities of mo'o ku'auhau, as in genealogy, mo'o aina lands. Mo'o aina are smaller land divisions within an ahupua'a, waterways, and the Aloha Aina themselves, who are little mo'o aina, who protect these waterways. And that's kind of beautiful when you think about mo'o as a grandchild. So all of the Aloha Aina land and water protectors, they're all mo'o. They're all the descendants of the Aumakua, of the Akua. So I'm linking mapping and what I really want to focus on this image of the procession of the mo'o to represent the principle of the integrity of land. So you cannot break land up and say, this land is important and the piece right next to it is not important, right? It's all one foundation, one papa hanau moku. So that foundation, that papa, connects all of us all over this earth. Yeah. And I also want to talk about how a harmful event in one place ripples out to other places, like the jet fuel tanks at Red Hill, but also how restoration work ripples out across the Aina. And I want to focus specifically on Paipai o He'eia and thinking also about Ho'olu Aina, which is fairly close to Red Hill, yeah, or Kapuka Key. Then I also want to, at the end, have a little quick demo about how you all can access state registered maps, because there's a lot of ike kupuna, a lot of ancestral knowledge regarding place name through, that's conveyed and encoded in place names in those maps. I'm going to show you some examples. So just thinking about the title of the book, and when I first started to testify against harmful development projects, for example, the proposed construction of a light industrial park in Lualuale, which was actually where Maui was born. Maui was born in, according to Kamako, at Ulehava and Kaolai. And also, I started testifying against the construction of the 30-meter telescope. I began to see how there is a pattern in the way developers and the state present their arguments. So what they do is they depict very abundant lands as wastelands so that they can build on it. It's not wastelands. These lands are actually sometimes actually in cultivation. Sometimes these are cultural and sacred places that the state wants us to believe are wastelands. But and they do this through a very specific practice. And I talk about that as a mathematics of subdivision. So the developer will cut up a piece of land into smaller and smaller disconnected pieces, subdividing the land so that each individual little piece is no longer culturally significant. So I call this again, the mathematics of subdivision. So before I show you some examples of that, I want to get into lesson number 1. Okay, lesson 1 that you can take away from today is capital fears abundance. So we tend to think of capitalism as this overwhelmingly powerful system, but capital can only function if it produces this illusion of scarcity and it makes us think there's not enough food for everyone. That leads to competition and fighting over resources. Now, how do we work against that? Abundance is actually the threat to capitalism because it promises a just redistribution of food and housing and other things necessary to life. So capital fears abundance. And if capital fears abundance, then we should strike at capitalism where it's weakest by mapping the abundance capitalism fears. Every single time we map abundance, we strike at capitalism. And that is, when you think about Kanaka Maoli maps, they are almost always about abundance. I can hardly think of a Kanaka Maoli map in Mele or Mo'olelo that's about scarcity. Sometimes there are, but usually it's a lesson in how to restore abundance. So it's about let's map abundance. Let's not get, as Puni Jackson says, we always get caught in this deficit mindedness, but how about we think in an abundantly minded way so that we can learn to share our resources, we can learn to barter, we can learn other ways of exchange. Okay, so going back to this mathematics of subdivision. So what is it? So again, I talk about how the developer cuts land into smaller and smaller pieces and then says, oh, that's not culturally significant anymore. Yeah. So how do they do this? Here's an example from Lualualei. They were trying to build a solid waste facility. And so you see this red area here. This area had a 150-page cultural impact assessment saying it is a very important place. Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm getting it wrong. It's actually the other way around. The blue area had a 150-page cultural impact assessment. So switch that around. Blue had the 150-page cultural impact assessment. The red area had a 10-page cultural impact assessment. Now look, they're right next to each other. But what this shows, what the developer is trying to say is, yeah, this place in the blue might be culturally significant, but the red isn't. And we know that's bogus. Yeah, that's ridiculous. They are of the same lands. They are both share the same cultural sites, like Hina's, the markers of Hina's presence in Lualuale, the markers of Maui's presence in Lualuale. And
Candace,
so
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I think something happened to the share screen, so we can't see what you're referring to.
Oh, shucks. Did it
Yeah,
shut off?
I'm not sure what happened. Yeah,
Okay,
I just noticed.
Okay, going back in there. Let's go back to, okay, so I'm gonna try and share screen again. Oh, I wonder how it shut down. Okay, so I hope you guys caught that. Here's the PowerPoint, going back again. Okay, so that lesson number 1, capital fears abundance. 2, let's strike at capitalism by mapping abundance, which is actually what you find in Mo'olelo and Mele. So again, here are the 2 land areas. This blue one had a 150-page cultural impact assessment. This one had only a 10-page cultural impact assessment. Actually, the guy who did this CIA, he got later arrested. He got indicted for, I think, bribery. But anyway, more dirt on the state, yeah. Occupying states mathematics of subdivision. So here are 3 examples. One would be the rail, phased archaeological inventory surveys. So what they do is they only survey archaeologically piece by piece as the rail is being built. So what happens when they come to like a crazy like dense place where there's so many burials like in downtown? They're going to say, well, we can't change the route because we've already come this far. So that is one example of the mathematics of subdivision. Let's just only evaluate piece by piece until we get to the culturally significant area, and by that point we're going to say we already spent so much money, we can't stop the progress of the rail. Okay, so that's one really dirty way that the state um, engages in this mathematics of subdivision. A second way would be urban spot zoning. So in this particular map, you can see this little purple spot. They wanted to rezone this area from conservation district, which is kind of this light green area, to an urban district. So it would be one urban spot in the middle of a green agricultural district. And what other developers, if this had been allowed to do that, other developers would come in and say, oh, you know what, my industrial use is going to be consistent with this industrial use here. So in that way, I can have my area rezoned for industrial use. So that's a really dangerous way. It's kind of like, I think Kyle Kajihiro describes it as like a cancer. It's like a cancer that spreads out. Okay, then the other example would be like the way that developers in the state look at only individual sites. So this is the TMT site, right? And they say, look, it's not near anything culturally significant. There's no culturally significant site that's specifically in the boundary area of the TMT. Even though you have these sites around it, that doesn't mean it's significant. But let's look at the entire summit of Mauna Kea, where there are 263 Ahu altars and shrines, telling us the whole summit is significant. So anyway, this is how the state tries to present lands it calls unfertile, agriculturally non-productive, wastelands, into lands that it can reuse for its own industrial or scientific purposes. Okay, now somehow I have lost my cursor. Why does that happen? Oh, there we go. Okay, so so I kind of, it's a little bit hard because like I don't can see my cursor. Okay, there we go. I'm just gonna use my back and forth buttons. Okay, so so in the face of uh this kind of capitals rendering of abundant lands as wastelands, let's look to how the Akua are mapped on lands in Mele, in Oli, and in Mo'olelo. And Noelani Punivai has this really beautiful, beautiful quote where she explains that if you know your Akua, if you are pili to your Akua, if you have aloha for your Akua and understand their functions, you will know how to work with them and how to respond to them. When we know our Akua, we can call their names and activate them and ourselves. So that is another lesson. I guess that would actually be lesson number 3. We need to learn the names of the Akua of our places. And what are the Akua? The Akua are deities, but they are also elemental forms and natural processes. So they're not just gods in the sense people tend to think of Greek gods, but they're also elemental forms. So Kanaloa is the deep consciousness of the ocean. He is the ocean, yeah? And there are 400,000 Akua because every place has its own Akua. And that's why I begin, introducing myself by telling you who is my Vai, who is my Kai, who is my Mauna, and we should all learn that because that's the first step in growing our pilina with these Akua, yeah, and learning how to work with them and not against them. So another example of a deity would be like, say, Hina lua I ko'a. Hina lua'i is to vomit, and ko'a is coral. Or you could read that as Hina producing that which is within. Yeah. She expels the coral gametes, and that is the process of coral spawning. And she is partnered with Kukeapua, who is the masculine energy of the rising motion of the coral gametes. So I love this illustration of the Akua as, how their names reveal their ecological functions and how they are part of this larger arrangement of life. And in all of these stories, instead of having mathematics of subdivision, what you have is this kind of sense of pilina, the connectedness of everything, the integrity, pilina, or the mo'o continuum of everything. Okay, and so when we think about stewardship, so the Kanaka Ole Foundation came up with this wonderful, amazing island stewardship plan called Kiho'iho'i Kanawai, Restoring Kanawai for Island Stewardship. And they divide the island stewardship into 20, I think it's actually 22 vau or horizontal realms. So I'm not sure where I'm missing one, but there's a missing one in here. But there's at least 5 units of Vaulani, the atmosphere and skies, 10 units of Vau Honua, the earth, 6 units of Vau Kanaloa, the deep consciousness of the ocean. And another thing that we have to remember is that when we work with the Akua and when we map with the Akua have their own laws that supersede human laws. We all know how fallible human laws are. We live in Hawaii, right? We see laws that should be protecting sacred places, failing because of profit. So human laws are often motivated by profit, yeah, and the laws of the Akua are motivated by what is best for the earth, yeah. So 2 of the Kanawai, there's several, there are many, and in this document, they name several laws, but 2 that are really important to us in thinking about water would be the Ho'okiki Kanawai, the Edict of Continuum. So water should be allowed to flow from the mountains to the seas. Also, lava should be able to flow. Remember, people are coming up with crazy ideas of trying to dynamite the lava to change the flow of the lava. No, according to this Edict of Continuum, air rains here, water runs, rains fall, air and ocean currents are unobstructed. Yeah, so no building of seawalls. Seawalls would also violate this Edict of Continuum. Okay, and then there's also the Kiho'iho'i Kanawai, the Edict of Regeneration. So we're looking at how to return lands, waters, and Kanaka to health through regeneration. So this is an important basis for mapping when we think about these kinds of fundamental pilina, connectedness among different things. So let's talk about the relationship between Kane and Kanaloa. So when we're mapping the Akua, before I get to the mo'o, thinking about the Kane and Kanaloa. So Kane's freshwater flows are very cold, and they actually form a protective barrier around the islands, yeah? And so they cool off those ocean waters of Kanaloa in this perimeter around the islands. So when the hurricanes come barreling across the Pacific, you can see how hurricanes tend to veer north or they veer south once they hit the cold waters of the islands. That's why it's very important that we restore stream water flows. That's why we fight against the corporate diversion of water at Navaiha or at the East Maui streams. Like I just was going to the contested case hearing against Mahipono and East Maui irrigation. And it's ridiculous that they're actually water banking, water that they actually don't need. And I think that the attorney, David Kimo Franco, did a really excellent job of showing how EMI and Mahipono actually inflated their water budget, while at the same time being very inefficient in their use of these unlined kinds of reservoirs. But anyway, this is the relationship between Kane and Kanaloa. So this is a way of mapping that relation. This could be a mapping of the relationship of Kane and Kanaloa. And in the stories where you see the two of them traveling throughout the island, Kane is looking for the fresh water by thrusting his o'o into the land and finding the springs that they need to use their ava. So Kane is seen as that very masculine force with that very phallic o stick, yeah. And Kanaloa often is seen as having more feminine qualities. He's the instigator. He's the one who says that we need to drink ava, yeah. And he is the one who instigates or initiates action. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the beginning of my book. So now you know that we think of Akua as elemental forms. And I love this image so much. To me, this is such a beautiful, beautiful image of how Kanaka Maoli, how the kupuna dealt with climate change. So this is the very opening of my book. And so I say that one of the most visually stunning illustrations of a Kanaka Maoli cartography of climate change is the oral tradition describing the migration of the mo'o, the great reptilian water deities, from their home islands in the clouds to Hawaii. In their lizard forms, the mo'o are formidable beings measuring 30 feet in length. In their Kanaka form, they are irresistibly beautiful women with great power, known to string yellow ilima flowers into lei while sunning themselves on rocks in pools of water. They are also desiring women known to seduce men and to kill their lovers. If mo'o are depicted as elemental forms to be feared, it is also because they are the awe-inspiring protectors of water. In the mo'olelo of Keaumelemele, Mo'oinanea, the matriarch of mo'o deities, gathers her family of mo'o to accompany her from their cloud islands of Nu'umealani, Ke'alohilani, and Kuaihelani to Oahu. They arrive in the Ehukai o Pua'ena, the misty sea spray of the surf at the jagged lava cape in Waialua, and they make their way to the dark waters of the long and narrow Uko'a fish pond, where the aka'akai, the bulrushes, and the uki, the sedge, stir with plentiful fish. Then across the wind-blown plains of Lauhulu, perhaps to the Kaukonahua stream. So I'm going to read the Olelo Hawaii from there and from there to Kapukaki, because it's important to, when we can, to do it. Ua hiki mua mai oia ma pua e na waialua. Aia malaila kona wahi I ho'onoho pono ai I kana huaka'i nui. Oia ho'i ka huaka'i o nā mo'o. Aia ma ke kula o Lauhulu ma waialua. Ua pani pa'a loa ia wahi e nā mo'o. O ka hiki mua ana ke io o nā mo'o kupua ma kia pai Aina. Ma muli no ia o ka makemake o ka mo'o I nā nea. A pene e maupopo ai ka nui o nā mo'o. Ua ho'onoho pālua ia ka hele ana o ka huaka'i. O ka makamua o nā mo'o, ai ai ka pi'ina o ka pukaki. A o ka hope no ho'i aia no I Lauhulu. A mawaena mai o kia wahi mai waialua ewa. Ua pani pa'a loa ia e nā mo'o. So Mo'oinanea arrived first at Pua'ena in Waialua. There she arranged her great company of lizards. The plain of Lauhulu and Waialua was covered with them. This was the first time that the supernatural lizards arrived on these islands. It was through the will of Mo'oinanea. This is how we know the number of lizards. She set them 2 by 2 in the procession. When the first of the lizards reached the incline of Kapukaki, or Red Hill, the last ones were still in Lauhulu, and between the two places, from Waialua to Ewa, the places were covered with lizards. So from these words, we can imagine the stately procession of mo'o, their great tails sweeping from side to side, flickering between their reptilian forms as enormous lizards, and their human forms as fierce men and women, making their way across the plains with the Ko'olau Mountains misted with rain to their left and the cloud-covered summit of Ka'ala in the Wai'anae Mountains to their right. So what does this mo'olelo teach us? So this mo'olelo is a mapping of water. So the mo'olelo maps the hydrological cycle as it unfolds along the backbone of the continuous line of mo'o. Again, thinking about that procession of 30-foot long mo'o, how that procession has this one continuous backbone of the mo'o. This is the genealogical line of Mo'oinanea, all of the mo'o as her descendants. The mo'o arrive in the sea spray of Pua'ena, where salt particulates seed clouds that sweep along past the fish ponds, watering the plains of Waialua, where the waters of two mountain ranges meet. So this mapping of the migration of the mo'o may have taken place when the kupuna saw cascading changes in the natural world, perhaps an intensification of heat, a lessening of rainfall, shift in the migration patterns of the anai or the mullet, in the health of the limu or the seaweeds, in the numbers of oopi or goby fish who propel their way up waterfalls hundreds of feet high. One thing is certain. The arrival of the mo'o signals a historic moment when Kanaka Maoli began to pay greater attention to the care and conservation of water and the cultivation of fish. The mo'o became known as the guardians who enforced conservation, kanawai, or the laws to protect springs, streams, and fish ponds, ensuring that water was never taken for granted. So what I tried to do was, so here's a, kind of imagine this iwikua mo'o, this continuous backbone of the mo'o, who are the protectors of water. And I tried to map their path according to this geological map. And what I did was I looked at the places where this is the Wai'anae volcanic series and this is the Ko'olau volcanic series. And where the two series meet is a dip called an erosional unconformity. So it's a place where, because there's a dip like that, the waters from the Wai'anae mountains on this side of the mountains and the waters on the, I guess this is the Kona side of the Ko'olau, they all meet in this meeting of waters in the Kaukonahua stream. And so I tried to track that stream flow because I figured the mo'o would want to be near water. And there are so many underground. In chapter 5, I talk about all of the lava tunnels and the karst caves that go through the limestone or the coral. There's so many tunnels that sharks would swim through, that Kanaka would paddle their canoes through. That's why we hear sometimes about stories of how, there's that military base up here in Kunia, that secret military base in the mountains. And we used to hear stories about how the military uses these underground caves, tunnels to transport munitions. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I know that, you cannot go into that base with a camera or a phone. They confiscate all your phones before you're allowed into that base because my sister was like a contractor and she had to go and make a bid and she said, oh, it's crazy to go into that place. All right, so I have all kind of crazy stories like that. But so this is like the overland path they would have taken. This is Waialua. You can see all the wind farms here that the people of Kahuku were fighting against that are too close to homes. Yeah, I don't know if this is Kahuku, but I know the Waialua is here. And way on this side, you can see this is Diamond Head over here. Diamond Head's here. So this is what it would have looked like as they were walking across. Okay, so when we think about these interconnected, these mo'o traveling across the land, it also reminds us there is a term for mo'o Aina. And mo'o Aina is a reference again to land divisions that are smaller than Ahupua'a. And so these mo'o Aina thinking about the procession of mo'o, we can also think about them as a procession of mo'o aina that are linked to each other. And so mo'o aina, here's an example of a mo'o aina map. So LCA 3131, this is a map that shows us how to find Maui's birthplace in Lualuale Valley. So Alice, we're so, I miss Alice Greenwood. She actually carried a binder around to every land use commission meeting or any neighborhood board meeting having to, involving land use. She would carry her book with all the land commission awards in Waianae so that she could, testify as to the importance of lands. And when she heard that they wanted to build a light industrial park on lands called Kaolai, she remembered seeing this particular LCA 3131. Kua Pu'u was the claimant, and he and this is how the LCAs are usually structured, right? There are 3 apana or sections, and 2 of them name Kaolai. So what it identifies is that Kaolai is a long ili that stretches from the mountains to the sea. But this Mo'oaina map is beautiful because what it shows us is how it is defined, how Mo'oaina are defined not by boundaries of separation, but by seams of relationality. So this one looks at Apana 2 and 3. So Apana 2 is bounded, it's a mulivai of Ulehava, so the meeting of the fresh and salt waters in the Ulehava stream, bounded Mauka by the Pali Kavakea, Eva by the Iliaina Kaolai, Makai by the public road, which is Farrington Highway, and Waianae by the Pali Pu'uohulu. So again, these are the natural land formations that define this particular the mo'o, or it's actually the Iliaina Kaolai through these mo'o. Apana 3 also identifies Avava Voke. So this one here, this Apana 2 located the birthplace of Maui by the seashore. The point where Pu'u Heleakala points to Ulehava. But when you look at Apana 3, what it shows us is that the Iliaina continues all the way up to this Avava Voke. So this Voke Valley inland. So it's bordered Makai by the Pali, Mauka by the Pali, Eva by the Pali Ki'ilo Hulu, Makai by the Iliaina Kaolai, and Waianae by the Kula Pili. So this one is further inland, and it turned out this particular Apana 3, this particular Mo'oaina, was the one that locates Kaolai inland, right on the purple spot where developers wanted to build that light industrial park. But I also included, just for a comparison, is like because I know Ke'aumoku Kapu is, had this very, very important case that Lance helped to argue. This LCA 6507 in Kaua'ula, this one doesn't have quite the same. There's some, references to highways and roads, but what I love about this is that it shows how the Mo'oaina are bounded by the pilina between people. So by Ho'onaulu's land or by Manu's land. And those are the kinds of boundaries that we see in this particular Mo'oaina. And this is the naming of the people in this way for the these Mo'oaina, these Mo'os, is what enables people to reclaim their Kuleana lands in Kaua'ula. So just really happy that that's happening. Okay, so lesson number 2 in this, thinking about Mo'oaina and the kinds of lessons we can learn from mapping the Akua and mapping the land formations and elements in that way. Lesson number 2 is that a small harmful change, like a 1 degree Celsius increase in temperatures, will cause like glacier melt, rising seas, species extinction, right? Fish kills, changing El Nino patterns. But we also have to remember that a small restorative change ripples out across ecosystems around the world. So, capitalism portrays, climate change as the end of civilization, the end of humankind. And so we need to live now, and let's spend all our money now because we don't have a future. No, that doesn't work that way, because when we think about it, what's going to happen is that climate change will bring about the demise of capitalism and capitalist economies of scarcity, making way for indigenous economies of abundance. So I should have typed that in as a lesson, but yeah, I could say that again. Climate change will bring about the demise of capitalist economies of scarcity and will make way for indigenous economies of abundance. So indigenous people will survive climate change. Okay, so thinking about how these small, I wanted to give you a visual for like the idea of a small incremental change leading to um, ever expanding. Oh, okay, I'm on 5 more minutes. Ever expanding kinds of restorative effects. So this is a spring in Waianae, and it's tiny. It's like 1 foot across, and you think, what good can that spring do? But that spring in Waianae feeds this lo'i. And so this lo'i was planted by Eric Enos and some of the youth in Waianae, and I think maybe even some of some of the people who are who go to Ka'ala Cultural Learning Center for healing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking also again about these ever expanding kinds of examples of abundance. So let's talk about, okay, one restorative effect. How about you chop down a mangrove, one little mangrove tree that's blocking a stream and the stream flow into Haleo Meheanu, or the He'ea fish pond. So Meheanu is also a mo'o, yeah? She's the mo'o of the He'ea fish pond. So burn the mangroves to free the waters of He'ea stream. What comes back? These are the restorative effects. I talk about this in chapter 6. I interviewed Hi'ile Cavelo. So she said once they got rid of the mangrove and they had the fresh waters flowing into the fish pond, it oxygenated the water, it cooled off the water. It's helping to prevent major fish kills that happens when when there's conditions of no wind, high temperatures, yeah. There's a lack of oxygenation in the fish pond. But when you have that freshwater stream flowing back into He'ea fish pond, the Ai'o come back, the native birds come back, the limu ele ele, which is an indicator for fresh water, comes back, the kipukai, the ahu'ava, and the akulikuli. So these are all other forms of, they're part of this cascading effects of restoration, and every fish pond goes through this. The moi comes back, all the fish come back, yeah. So that's what happens when they restored the stream flow to Waiahole Stream. They saw a return, an exponential return of moi. Okay, so another way to think about that procession of mo'o is thinking about all of us as protectors of lands and waters, and how we too form these kinds of processions, or we would say like these protective barriers. So I in chapter 5, or actually chapter 6, I talk about how mea. So if you think about that, the ways that the lizards, the mo'o, pack the plains, pani pa'aloa, they pack the plains at Waialua. They also pack the plains in front of Kualoa, because Haumea multiplies her bodies in front of Kualoa. She just multiplies herself into these beautiful women bodies who flicker to me between their mo'o and their wahine forms. The Paliku cliffs are Haumea's ancestors. Yeah, she descends from the Paliku line. So they stand there to protect Wakea, who is hidden up in the cliffs of Paliku. And the women form this line in front of Kualoa, and they stand there, and then Kumuhonua's men come down the pali, and they see these beautiful women, and they approach one of the women and they say, "Where is Wakea?" And the woman says to them, "If you know what's best for you, you should turn around and go home." And they laugh at her because she's just a pretty face. And they refer to as Hevahine Aiai, which actually is a cool referent for Hauvahine, one of the mo'o. And this is from Kihe de Silva. He says that Hauvahine is a kind of nickname for, I'm sorry, Hevahine Aiai is a nickname for Hauvahine. Anyway, the women let fly these kukui nuts they have in their hands, and each one hits a warrior in the forehead and kills them immediately. So this powerful line of women then go to inhabit all of the fish ponds and the streams and the springs on the windward side of the island. Yeah. And from every, I would like to think that from every male body grew a kukui tree. Yeah, because the seed would plant in its body. So when we think about the line of Haumea's bodies protecting Paliku, protecting Wākea, then we also think about this line of protectors in front of the Waiahole Poi factory with their arms raised in unison against eviction. They are called the Kalopa'a o Waiahole, or the hard taro of Waiahole. The people are the hard taro because they're obstinate. So this is them in their land struggle and in their struggle. This is the Waiahole people. This is Charlie Ripoon and Vicky Lee, protecting the waters of Waiahole. The Waiahole irrigation ditch guy was there to try to turn the water valve, and they were there standing to make sure that he didn't try to restore water back to the Waiahole irrigation ditch system, because it was actually supposed to be returned to Waiahole at that point. This was after the contested case hearing in the 1990s. So this is them standing guard, and Vicky tells that story about how they did that. Now this reminds us of the lines of 16 kia'i, representing the 16 eras of the Kumulipo going up the Mauna, cataloging the birth of all living things from Po, including the lands and the stars, and thinking about how the children also are learning how to be protectors. And this is artwork by Haley Kailiehu called Julio, and it's showing how the children are like the hulis sprouting up from the asphalt in the legendary crosswalk. Yeah, this is at Halepohaku. And again, thinking about June 24, 2015, the Manawahine line, where they were chanting Malana Mai Ka'u, which calls together all the districts of Hawaii Island in the building of a canoe, and Haley Kailiehu's beautiful artwork talking about returning to the Pico, and this is Lake Vayao. But you see how all of these images remind us of that procession of the mo'o, or of the line of women at Kualoa, and it gives us this visual kind of imagery of how protectors stand for the land. And we're not standing against something, we're standing for the land, we're standing for the water. And here are the kupuna standing on the front line in 2019, the Wahine line in 2019 against all the Docare officers, and today the Kia Iwai o Kapukaki standing against the contamination of our aquifers at Red Hill. So okay, I promised you I was going to show you, so I'm sorry, I'm going to move into the demo part. So now if you want to search for state registered maps yourselves, you can Google DAGS and Land Survey Bureau. I should have wrote that more clear, but Google DAGS, Land Survey Bureau. Actually, I can, and then you know what, you can, I'm going to just show you. I'm going to stop. Well, let me see. I'm going to share, but I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to walk you through this process, because I want each of you to be able to look up your own maps like this. So yeah, this is what I do, just for fun. Okay, so we're going to Google DAGS, Land Survey Bureau. Now, interestingly, when you go here, yeah, all of the, oh, you can do map search. Let's go straight to map search. That's even more fast. There we go. Okay, look, so it's all here. Now you go first to this registered map index. The registered map index gives you a listing of all the places you can find maps for. So I want to show you a really cool map. So it goes by island first. So you see how it's listed. Sorry, I should show you. Map, Isle, District, Apupua'a. So let's look for, I'm going to look for, you know, first there's Hawaii Island, and then it's going to be Maui. And then I'm looking for Oahu. I want to show you this really cool fisheries map that is like a gem here that people, you know, I would not have seen it because it looks like a horrible map, but if you gotta blow everything up really big so you can see. So now we're on Maui. Okay, now we're on Oahu. Are we on? Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna look for Waianae. No, I'm gonna look for Honolulu. I'm gonna look for Kalihi. Kalihi fish. There's a Kaliava fisheries map. That's really, really cool. I know it's getting dizzy. Yeah, sorry. Kalihi. Let's see. So we're looking for a fisheries map. Kaliava fishery. There we go. Okay, so you look for the map number 1138. So the map number is here in the first column, and you go back to this map index. I mean here, this site, and you fill in registered map 1138. Search, and it pulls up the map for you. And then, okay, here's this butt ugly map, right? You think, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? But then you turn it around so that you can actually read it. Let's see, which is the best way to read it. Yeah, this way. This is the fish ponds. Oh, I think it's upside down now. Yeah, I think it's upside down. Gotta go the other way. Maybe it was correct. Okay. Here are all the fish ponds. Here, Mokawea fisheries. So check this out. They're like all these names of the reef, like Kalua Puhi. Yeah. Oh, these are the original names of the fish ponds where you only see mats in containers now. Ananoho, Paho, Paho Nui. Yeah. But then there's like Kalua Puhi, which I was like, oh my gosh, could you find Puhi over there if you wanted to eat, you know, unagi or whatever. Then there's Ahupohaku, and then there's places named after like different shellfish, and there's this place called Keahu, Keahuku Mano. So this part, it's a little bit unclear. Actually, you can probably blow it up more to make it bigger. Yeah, I think is it Mano or Mano? This sounds like this could have had to do with the shark. So I know that one point when Makali'i, this is where Makali'i, there's an entrance at this area at Mokawea at the you know, that's the kai, the sorry. Ke'ehi is the kai of Kalihi. So this would be an area where the mano could swim into the mountains. That's why there were three places in Moanalua and Kalihi and Kapalama where sharks could swim into the mountains. So those three areas have stories about sharks. So like there would be Kianakamano, the cave of the shark, or at say like Kamehameha schools, you know, there's a Kialakamano, which is like the road of the shark. Yeah. So anyway, this one gives you all kinds of really cool place names. And I tried looking up, there were all these like little kalai one, and then there were like little shellfish names as well. Okay.
Candace, we
Yes.
actually have a question from Nate. He's asking, where's Kalihi in this map?
So this is Mokawea. This is the shoreline of Kalihi. So you know Sand Island. This is by Sand Island. So you know where Sand Island is? This is where you would have this Ananoho, the fish ponds. I used to have shucks. I used to have a map of Kalihi. I don't know if I have. Let me see. Is that no? That's not the right one. I don't know if this one would show. Shucks, sorry, I don't think I have it here. Oh, here I do. Yay! I made this map. This is when I was learning how to make maps and I was just fooling around. Okay, so this is like a really cool map of Kalihi. We were doing a bus tour of Kalihi. So this map is of this area right here. So yeah, this is where there was a lay of fish ponds at Kalihi at Keahi, like Sand Island. This is Sand Island. Oh, this is Sand Island. And this is over here is Mokawea. And this one is like Kahaka'aulana and Mokuoeo. Okay, So we usually go here. We go into this parking lot area, and then we take the canoe, and then Kehaulani Kupihea takes us to Mokauea over here. But isn't it so cool? Like I try to. This is Haumea. This is the breadfruit tree that Puni planted at Holu Aina, because Holu Aina is up here. But this is what it used to look like. So the fisheries map is of this area right here. Yeah. Thanks for that question, Nate. Okay. I think. Oh, I have one more cool map to show you. But we're at time, or I guess I'll show you one more map, okay? Because this one is kind of. Oh, sorry, I gotta share again. One more map to show you how people have used mapping to make arguments to the state. So when the state is trying to say, oh, you cannot put your stream diversion pipe into this water because you don't have a license or a permit to do so. So I'm gonna show you. Oh shucks, this is the wrong one. Oh, I got too many windows open, that's why. Okay, here, this one. So this is in the book. This is registered map 2372. So again, if you typed in 2372 at that other website, you would get this map. Check this out. Lands formerly in Taro, 24 acres. They actually mapped what lands used to be in Taro. But you see over here, all these tunnels, these are all the diversion tunnels that diverted all the water. So the ranches diverted, Waianae Ranch diverted all the water, and it made all of these areas, they could no longer grow taro. And there's actually a note on the side of the map, and that marginalia is really important. It says that formerly in Taro, 289 acres, and there were 16 diversion tunnels, and there were 26 springs. So that's how we know there was water in Waianae. And so what happened was Eric Enos, when he was starting, this was before time when they had the Opio, what was it called? The Opio project. I can't remember. It's the Opio project. Opelu, the Opelu project, right? For the young people. And they were up in Waianae Valley, and they were, they would have a youth center for youth to gather, and they actually went hiking, and they found all this ancient Lo'ikalo walls. And so what Eric did, and it's in this area, I think, what Eric did was he, I think they put a pipe from the stream that the ranch had used to divert. So I think it was into the area, might have been specifically where the water was being diverted to the ranch, but they used the pipe to divert the water, or not to use the water for their lo'i. And so then the Water Commission said, oh, that pipe is not permitted. Or they're trying to say that, I guess this was in the 70s. So they're saying that you can't use that water for this kalo. And he says, it's not a, so Eric, based on this map that Marian Kelly found, and actually Uncle Butch Detroit told me about this map, said that Eric used this argument to say that Ka'ala Farms is located on lands formerly in Taro, according to this map. So what it was a restoration of water, not a diversion of water. And Uncle Earl Kava'a says that Kanaka never diverted water. He says there's not a word for diversion. We use water. The word you see is hana. He says Kanaka hana the water. They use the water. And that was a really important point that Kapua Sproat was saying is very important when we think about Kanaka worldviews. And that's why all of this mapping of abundance, I was just trying to enter back into Kanaka worldviews, because we keep getting trapped in the state's kinds of logics and their kinds of languages. So what happens when we go outside and we think about mo'o aina, and we think about pilina, and we think about mo'o as continuum? Anyway, so that's the talk, and I'm so sorry I kind of always go over time because I get so excited, so much I want to share with you all. But okay, I'm done. Mahalo. So I don't know if there's more questions people have.
There is a ton of questions.
Oh, very
we'll have to hold on to you for a little while longer.
Yeah, so is it on the Facebook side?
It's on Facebook, on HK West Maui Community Fund, that page.
Okay.
And so people are just posting in the chat. We got some other ways too.
Okay.
Yeah,
ask me hard questions. Now. I like hard questions.
There's some easy questions, I think.
Okay.
Na ka'ua e pale me ka ihe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the name, but they asked the guy who did the 10 pages. I guess they were wondering, is that the one that got indicted, or who is he?
Yeah. Yeah, he ended up getting indicted. I don't want to say his name because I don't like get in trouble, but it's not that hard to figure out actually. Yeah, he got indicted for like I don't know if he was taking the bribery or if he was trying to bribe somebody, but it was a really shady. I mean, when someone turns in a 10-page cultural impact assessment, when there was a 150-page one done just 3 years before, that person is working for the developer and is giving the developer what he or she wants. Most cultural impact assessments are done, well, not most, but the ones done by cultural surveys Hawaii is actually, they're pretty good, most times. The ones done by Kumupono Associates, that's the one that Kipa Mali runs. That one is awesome. And actually, I would suggest that's a really good resource. If you ever want to research a place, I always start by looking to see if Kipa has already done a cultural impact assessment of that place, because that would be like, that's what, saves you so much work because he's done all the work already. Yeah. But yeah, I know. Is that weird? Like that guy got indicted for bribery. It's kind of like Kealoha. Catherine Kealoha signed off on the TMT environmental impact statement, right? At one point, and I'm like, and we're all looking at that and thinking, oh damn, all these criminals signing off on these environmental impact statements. So I'm so glad that I do work for the university, but I can pretty much say what I want because academic freedom, yeah. As long as I'm not telling lies or as long as I can back up what I say. So yeah, anyway, I can show that Catherine Kealoha did sign some of those EIS documents and we were all flabbergasted, right? Okay, sorry, I don't know what other questions.
There's a bunch more questions.
Okay.
Marsha Timboy just asking, is Mo'o Aina like Ili land divisions or different?
Or like, what is that? Ili? Yeah,
Yeah.
smaller than Ili. They're smaller than Ili. So that's why, like, when people would make kuleana, so the Hoa Aina were the kuleana land claimants. When they would make their land claims, normally they would claim 3 apana, and usually those apana or those sections would be mo'o. So if you look at the Kaua Ula one, it's really cool because it says claimant comes forth and claims, how does it say? It says 4 mo'os. Section 2 is made up of 4 mo'os. Section 1 made up of 2 mo'os. Section 3 made up of house lot and mo'o. Section 4 pasture. Section 5 pasture. Most times there's only 3 apana, but this one has 5. So, and they don't always get awarded all of them. So like in the case of the Kuapu'u Land Commission Award 3131, he was only awarded the first apana. He was not awarded apanas 2 and 3. So yeah, so mo'o are smaller because like Kanaka, they gave everything a name. So every lo'i had a name. And the reason being is when you chant and you oli, then you can call the akua to come and rain on your lo'i. You call out the name of your lo'i and you ask, Lono and the clouds to come and rain over that your lo'i. Yeah. So that's why everything was named so that you could activate them and you could activate yourself in relation to them. Yeah. So I'm taking Oli classes and that's super cool, like how you can call the clouds to rain on your lo'i and not somebody else. Don't go over there. Come over here and rain on my lo'i. It's kind of funny. Okay.
So Renny Ayai Bello asked, is this the first of a series? It's wonderful and so informative. So good to hear while reading your book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he is my teacher. So she's my kappa teacher, my chant teacher, my spiritual guide. She's everything. So I don't know if she means like for this talk,
I think she means for your book.
oh, for my book. Okay. So yeah, I'm working on book number 2. It's called Elemental Cartographies, and because I'm learning more about chant, I want to be very respectful and very careful. So I tend not to print out the chants. I tend to kind of paraphrase what they say, but there's very important information in the chants, or sometimes they appear in books like Kamapua. I quote this really beautiful passage where he's battling these ocean currents and these tides, and he's battling like reefs, and he's battling sea creatures like opihi and pipipi. And that's not a mele, but it's published as a mo'olelo, like Lilikala Kamelehiva also did an English translation. So I try to pick ones that are Noah, that are free, but there's so much knowledge about relationships with the elements that come through. Like when Kamapua, okay, so I'll just tell you this really cool part. When Kamapua is fighting with these elements, it says that Amake, to the point of death, he defeats them to the like Luluku Amake or something to the point of death. But I learned from one of my Hawaiian language kumu that just because you make doesn't mean you're dead. You got to be make loa for be dead. You got to be very dead. So if you're make, it could mean you're like on the brink of death. And Kamapua, right, he can't defeat an ocean current, right? You can't change an ocean current. So what I understand that to mean is that he survives it, that he works with the ocean current. So he's not killing the ocean current to the point where it's actually makeloa. He's just worked with it to the point where he has survived that particular current, yeah, and can make his way to um, kahiki. Anyway, this is a kind of cool language thing. Like I was like, oh yeah, it's not makeloa. So anyway,
That's fascinating.
yeah.
But actually, she had a follow-up
Oh,
question. This is also
okay.
from Yaya. Can you speak a little more to the procession of mo'o? We seem to divert a little to so many different things, but maybe the continuity of these mo'o aina and how they connect? That's the question.
Yeah, so mo'oaina as in connection, and I think this speaks to like how we so often, like, those of us who live in Kaneohe, like I've heard people say, oh, we live in Kaneohe, so we don't need to worry about Red Hill. I was like, no, we're all connected. We all share water. So when the Red Hill, when the wells and the are shut down, then there's a heavier demand on all of our other water supply, which the problem now is that it might actually hit the saltwater level, right? And there's going to be the intrusion of salt water into the fresh water. So it affects all of us. So this is like an understanding of the ways that mo'o remind us that anything we do has planetary implications, whether it's something harmful or whether it's something that is restorative. And I wanted to emphasize that Hawaii has a planetary restorative effect because the things that are happening here are impacting people all over the world. You know, and I really encourage people to sign up for Kikuhi's land stewardship courses, the Halau Ohia land stewardship courses, because she teaches so many important things in that class. It's just amazing and beautiful, and there are people from all over the world taking those land management classes. So I feel like Kanaka Maoli Ike Kupuna teaches people all over the world how to steward land. And it's not just Kanaka Maoli, it's other indigenous peoples as well. People like Robin Wall Kimmerer, and I teach that in English, it's a foundations course for all English majors. They read Braiding Sweetgrass because to me, she's a poet and she's a biologist, a native. She's Potawatomi, and she thinks about planetary implications for the things that we do. So the mo'o, there are mo'o for every body of water, mo'o inanea at Mauna Wakea. There's a spring near me, Ha'akolea, and the mo'o for that is Kameha'ikana. And we're all waiting for Aloha Lani Brown's book on mo'o to come out because I know that we have so much to learn from her knowledge about mo'o. But the mo'o as water protectors, I think that there's so many other aspects to the kind of knowledge that mo'o have in terms of how Mo'oina Nea plots genealogy. But I also like to think about them as water protectors because there's so many threats to our water, and it's really empowering to see, like say at Kauaula, to see Kiha Wahine, making her appearance on that wall, on that underpass, that she is part of the struggle. And Kamehameha used to carry Kiha Wahine, a ki'i of her, into battle she was on his canoe. So we need to have these ki'i when we go into battle, when we go into these very toxic state offices and agencies trying to make a case for the protection of water, like watching David Kimo Franco, make the case for the East Maui streams. It was really frustrating to watch how the state handles that. So you need that kind of spiritual guidance from, water protectors, maybe like Kiha Wahine. I'm not an expert in mo'o, so all I know is how the mo'o keep appearing again and again in our struggles as sources of strength and resilience for people to call upon when it's like when it gets really when things get very toxic. Yeah. um so yeah, I've done, yeah, okay, yeah,
Okay,
okay,
I have, I think the last question, and this
okay.
kind of goes to the thesis of your book, because you said abundance is a threat to capitalism. But like on an island, what about carrying capacity? I mean, we hear like Stanley Chang talking about 100,000 more units in Hawaii. Like, I don't know, is there a like that wasn't probably something anticipated in traditional Hawaii, the amount of people now, or is that do you have does carrying capacity enter into the considerations of abundance or the understandings of abundance you're working with?
Yeah, well, okay, so I can think of different ways to talk about that question. So, like again, going back to Puni Jackson, talking about how she says for Hawaiians, we've been raised with a deficit mindedness. All of this stuff has been taken away from us. All our land has been taken from us. But she says we have to cultivate an abundant mindedness in terms of appreciating what we do have, which are our children, our relationships, and our capacity to work on the land, even though the leases are still being held by the state. Yeah. And it's through that process of cultivating that relationship, that pilina with Akua, that has been so helpful for people, for health reasons, of people who go to Ho'olu Aina to work the land, because it is a form of self-care and therapy, to work with the land and the soil and to grow things. So I think there's that part of care. There's also a way that for all of our health, but you're talking about like housing and stuff, and I think that the state does not take care of houseless people in Hawaii, right? And thinking about, I've been to, so in Wai'anae, there's the Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae. And so before, they were gifted that land in Wai'anae, I remember going to meetings and I remember hearing state agencies saying, we got to get people out of the, out of that, encampment. We got to get them into housing, and I thought about the work that Tatiana Young, Kalani Young does about Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae, and she shows how it's an alternative community to capitalism. It shows how they are governing themselves. So it's actually an interesting kind of model of an alternative to a capitalist system, because Twinkle Borge is like, she's like the kind of the adjudicator. She helps to, um, um, helps to work things out. People work their own stuff out together in a sometimes in a physical way, they fight it out, but then, it's always within a kind of set of guidelines that protect the people. So when we think about abundance, I think about how like Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae, it's not about how they don't have anything. It's about the human relationships that they've cultivated that have actually made them really strong, and really rich. And I'm not downplaying the struggle of how hard it is to live on, $40 a week or whatever, it is. But I'm saying that if we only focus on that, we don't see that love and care that they give each other in that community, that where people take care of each other's children, where they have a free store and you can go and get clothes if you have a job interview. The way that they provide for each other really reminds us of the pu'uhonua at pu'uhonua o pu'uhuluhulu at Mauna Wakea, where people cared for each other in a way that was, of course we still have to buy heaters, but Andre builds like a solar generator. I mean, there are creative ways of getting around the markets that capitalism tries to uh, entrap us in. We're all addicted to capital in some ways, and so thinking about abundance differently helps to wean us off of capitalism. How do we support each other? Mutual care. I think about all the things that people were saying at Red Hill. Mutual care. Who keeps us safe? We can't depend on the state to keep us safe. A lot of times what does are community-led initiatives, community-led safety. I'm thinking about also like community-based what is it, subsistence fishing management areas. I don't always get those in the right order, but the CBSMFM or something like that, right? On Kauai, where they come up with their own rules to regulate fishing, and they enforce it themselves. Those kind of community initiatives of care are what create this abundance for all of us.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you so much, Candace. And yeah, so thank you for coming. And I don't know,
Yeah.
anything else?
If you have questions and
Plug your book,
wanna-
plug your book, plug your book.
Yes,
okay,
plug your book.
Okay, here it is. Mapping Abundance for a Planetary Future. You can go to the Duke website. You know what? I think they don't have copies anymore at the Duke website, but they used to
Oh,
have.
I was posting that. Maybe,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
like FJKNE 30 to get a 30% discount. You can try, but I think the website says there are no copies available. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh,
You can try. Go try. Go try. Go try. It costs $27. So yeah, maybe kind of expensive. But they have I think they have ebook versions for 15. Yeah, they have like ebook versions. So you could get ebook versions. They have copies at the library. I try to give extra copies to different places like LCCYNI's library. Whenever I go to a school that has a library, I try to give them one copy. So, I feel like, thank you, Lance. Yeah, and if you have questions, please email me because I find them like super helpful. The questions are helpful as I'm writing the new book. It gets me to thinking on what I need to talk more about. But mahalo, thank you guys for everything.
If you have a chance, please look at the Facebook page because there's a lot of comments and questions that I didn't get to get to.
Awesome,
Okay.
awesomeness. Thank you.
Mahalo, Candace. Bye.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Bye.
Bye.